Long before Wi-Fi or gigabit fiber, cities like New York and Paris built a secret steampunk internet beneath their streets, a network of cast iron tubes that fired messages, cash, and even live animals at 35 miles per hour, dodging surface traffic entirely. In Manhattan alone, this underground system shuttled 95,000 letters a day, about a third of the city's total mail, connecting 23 post offices with a 27-mile metal web you have probably never heard of. How did our ancestors outsmart modern gridlock with pneumatic power? And why did we abandon a traffic-free physical internet that actually worked? The answers are buried just below your feet. Imagine a city-sized straw running beneath your feet, stretching for miles under concrete and chaos. Now picture this: a metal canister loaded with letters, cash, or even a live cat shot through that straw at the speed of a city bus on the highway, 35 miles per hour, without ever hitting a red light. That is the raw power behind the pneumatic tube network. The whole thing runs on one simple trick: compressed air. Think of a massive pair of invisible lungs, powered by steam engines in the early days and later by electric motors. At one end, a blower cranks up the pressure, forcing air into the tubes. At the other end, a vacuum pump sucks air out, creating a pressure difference. Drop a capsule into the tube, seal the hatch, and the air does the rest, either blasting it forward or pulling it along depending on which side you are on. These were not little pipes either. In New York, the tubes were over 8 inches wide, made of cast iron, and bolted together in double runs, one for each direction. The capsules themselves looked like steel torpedoes, about 2 feet long and weighing 20 pounds when empty. Each one could swallow up to 600 letters at a time. Operators loaded the canisters, latched the hatches, and hit the switch. Seconds later, a deep whoosh echoed through the tunnel as the capsule vanished into darkness, riding a cushion of air. The system was so fast it left horse-drawn wagons and early trucks in the dust. A capsule could travel from Manhattan's main post office to Harlem in just 20 minutes, something modern delivery vans cannot touch in today's traffic. The network did not care about snow, rain, or gridlock. It just kept firing canisters through the veins of the city, 24 hours a day. Engineers obsessed over the details. Every curve in the tube had to be gentle enough to keep the capsule from jamming at high speed. Pressure was monitored constantly, usually kept between 3 and 8 pounds per square inch, enough to launch a metal canister down the line, but not so much that it would blow out the joints. If you could see inside, you would watch a steady parade of capsules zipping along, each one carrying everything from urgent business contracts to the odd novelty payload: a Bible, a suit of clothes, or yes, a cat in a sack, just to prove it could be done. This was the Victorian answer to instant messaging: an underground internet made of steel, steam, and air. And for decades, it worked. The only thing more impressive than the engineering was the sheer audacity: building a city-wide machine to move physical information faster than most cities move cars today. New York didn't just dabble in pneumatic tubes, it went all in, building a 27-mile underground web that tied the city together tighter than a subway map. This was no side project. 23 post offices across Manhattan were plugged into the system, each one acting like a data center on the Victorian internet. At its peak, these tubes carried 95,000 letters every single day, roughly a third of all the city's mail. Imagine a rush hour where the gridlock is underground and the traffic is pure information. The numbers are wild. Every day, operators loaded up steel capsules, each big enough to swallow 600 letters, and fired them off every few seconds. You could stand in a tube room and hear the constant thud and whoosh as canisters shot out, one every 6 to 15 seconds, all day and all night. The network didn't sleep. Postal workers ran 3 shifts, keeping the system humming around the clock. Blower rooms, buried beneath the city, pumped out compressed air with relentless force, monitored by crews who treated pressure gauges like a pilot watches the altimeter. If anything slipped, a leak, a jam, or a drop in pressure, mail could back up for blocks. So the staff stayed sharp, eyes on the dials, hands ready to clear a jam or patch a joint before the city's correspondence ground to a halt. This wasn't just about letters. The tubes moved contracts, stock orders, legal documents, anything that couldn't wait for a horse or a truck. Banks trusted the system to move cash and securities across town faster than any armed guard. The post office became an engineering powerhouse, running a logistics network that made the rest of the city look stuck in slow motion. Real estate values even jumped near tube hubs, because businesses wanted to be as close as possible to the city's fastest delivery route. All of this happened below the streets, invisible to most New Yorkers. But for the postal crews, the tube network was a living machine, one that demanded constant attention, discipline, and pride. When a capsule shot out of the hatch at the Harlem branch, still warm from its 20-minute sprint up from downtown, it was proof that the city's information lifeline was working exactly as planned. And for decades, nothing else could compete. Nobody trusted a new machine until it proved itself in public. So, when New York's Pneumatic tube network launched, the engineers and post office bosses didn't just send letters, they sent a show. The press crowded into the main post office in October 1897, waiting to see what would survive a high-speed trip under the city. The first stunt? They stuffed a live cat into a soft cotton sack, loaded it into a steel capsule, and fired it down the line. 20 minutes later, the capsule popped open at the Harlem branch. Out came the cat, dazed but alive, with its fur only slightly ruffled and its dignity nowhere to be found. The crowd went wild, but the cat wasn't the only headline act. Operators packed a full suit of clothes into another canister, including a jacket, trousers, shirt, and tie, all folded tight, and shot it uptown at 35 miles per hour. When the hatch opened, the suit came out ready for a quick shake and a hanger. Next, they sent a Bible, just to show the system could handle sacred cargo as easily as socks and stock tips. The press snapped photos, reporters scribbled notes, and the city's skeptics started to believe this underground wonder could move just about anything. These early demonstrations weren't just publicity stunts. They were calculated proof that the tubes were safe, reliable, and most importantly, could handle more than dry paper. If a live animal, a book, and a suit could make it through in one piece, so could a bundle of cash or a stack of legal contracts. Postal operators became part showman, part engineer, staging these spectacles to win over the public and outshine the old guard of horse-drawn wagons. The cat, the Bible, the suit all survived their trip through the city's iron veins. And with every bizarre delivery, the pneumatic tubes earned a little more trust, a little more awe, and a reputation for doing what seemed impossible. The message was clear. If it fits in the canister, the tubes will deliver it, no matter how strange the cargo. Paris didn't just copy New York's underground marvel. It built something even bigger, stranger, and, in its own way, more poetic. By the 1930s, the Paris Pneumatic network stretched an eye-watering 285 miles beneath the city, snaking through sewers and under boulevards, connecting 130 offices in a web so dense it made the metro look like an afterthought. But what really set Paris apart wasn't just the scale, it was the way Parisians used the tubes. This wasn't about hauling sacks of mail or banknotes. In Paris, the tubes carried messages that looked like tiny blue postcards, the famous Petit Bleu. A Petit Bleu was the 19th century version of a direct message. You would jot a note, for example, dinner at 8, meet me by the fountain, drop it at your local post office, and within a couple of hours, someone across town would have it in their hands. No traffic, no waiting for the evening post, no missed connections. For decades, Parisians used the tubes to send love notes, business deals, news flashes, and even breakups. If you lived in the city you knew the thrill of hearing a knock at your door and finding a blue slip waiting, still warm from its ride through the city's veins. The numbers are staggering. At its peak in the mid-20th century, the Paris system handled around 30 million messages a year. That's about 82,000 a day, zipping from Montmartre to Montparnasse, from the left bank to the Marais. The tubes didn't care if it was raining, or if the streets were jammed with taxis. They just kept moving, powered first by steam, then by electric pumps that could suck a capsule through 1.5 kilometers of pipe in under 12 minutes. Clerks became experts at packing the canisters, keeping the blue slips safe from smudges and creases. For Parisians, the tubes were more than just a delivery system. They were a secret channel for the city's heartbeat. Writers, lovers, bankers, and shopkeepers all sent their thoughts beneath the pavement, trusting the tubes to deliver faster than any messenger on a bicycle. Even in the age of the telephone, Parisians clung to their petit bleu because nothing else felt quite as direct or as private. While New York's tubes moved the city's business, Paris's tubes carried its secrets. The underground network wasn't just infrastructure, it was a social engine, making Paris feel smaller, faster, and more connected than any city on Earth. Picture this: a steel capsule loaded with urgent letters or a wad of cash, shot from Manhattan's main post office straight to Harlem, 8 miles in just 20 minutes, every single time. Not on a good day. Not with a police escort. Every time. The city's pneumatic tubes didn't care if it was Monday morning or a blizzard. The capsules ignored traffic jams, street protests, parades, and potholes. They just flew under the mess, powered by nothing but air and stubborn Victorian optimism. Now try that same route today. Take a delivery van out of Midtown at rush hour, crawl up 8th Avenue, weave past double-parked trucks, dodge a construction crew or two, and count the minutes. 45 if you're lucky. An hour is more like it if the FDR is a parking lot. The pneumatic tube did the trip in less than half the time, and it never got a parking ticket. This was not a fluke. The system was built for speed. Operators could fire off a new capsule every 6 to 15 seconds. That is a fresh delivery every time you blink. While today's couriers are stuck behind a garbage truck or circling for a loading spot, the tube's mail was already at the next post office, still warm from its ride. Even the fastest modern courier services cannot touch these numbers. If you sent a contract from downtown to Harlem by tube, you could get a signed reply back before your lunch break. Try doing that with a messenger stuck on 125th Street behind a city bus. For all the talk about smart cities and last-mile logistics, the Victorians built a network that flat out beat us at the one thing that matters most: time. They did not just shave a few minutes off the clock. They rewrote the rules. In a world where a pizza tracker can pinpoint your dinner, but your package still gets lost in traffic, it is hard not to feel a little cheated. The tubes delivered on a promise our cities still cannot keep. No gridlock, no delays, just pure, relentless speed. Pressure was the heartbeat of the whole system, but it could turn deadly in an instant. In 1950, a routine maintenance check on the Brooklyn-Manhattan spur ended in disaster. 2 crewmen were working inside the cramped tunnel, hunting for a stubborn leak in the cast iron pipe. They thought the line was safe. It was not. A steel capsule, still under full pressure, blasted through a weakened joint. The force ripped the pipe apart, sending a shockwave of compressed air and metal straight at the workers. One man was killed instantly, the other thrown against the wall, his body broken by the blast. The coroner's report blamed aging pipes and a failed valve, ordinary wear that turned lethal in a heartbeat. Families got the news no one expects from a city job. The post office ordered a full safety audit, and for the first time, the promise of speed came with a cost too high to ignore. The city's faith in the tubes cracked, right along with the iron underground. The end of the tubes was not just about rust and bad luck. It was a boardroom decision, pushed by budget hawks, political dealmakers, and the rising power of the auto industry. By the late 1940s, the post office was staring at $1 million annual bill just to keep the air flowing underground. Meanwhile, truck companies and their friends in City Hall were promising to move the same mail for $25,000 a year. That is not a typo. On paper, trucks looked like a bargain bin miracle. Congressional hearings turned into cost-cutting showdowns, with senators grilling engineers and accountants about every penny. Reports piled up. Trucks could do the job. Tubes were old news, and the country needed to tighten its belt after the war. The auto lobby saw an opening. They pitched trucks as modern, flexible, and most importantly, road-friendly. Postal administrators, under pressure to deliver savings, started shifting contracts away from the tubes. The writing was on the wall. In December 1953, New York's last capsule shot through the iron arteries, carrying a note that spelled out the shutdown. Paris limped along until 1984, but the pattern was the same. Budgets got squeezed, trucks took over, and the tube rooms fell silent. The underground internet did not die by accident. It was pushed out by policy, politics, and a hard sell from Detroit. Under the city, the old tubes haven't vanished. They're just buried, sealed off, and forgotten. Urban explorers, armed with flashlights and a stubborn sense of curiosity, have mapped rusting cast iron pipes running parallel to subway lines and popping up in basements, alleys, and manholes. Some shafts still carry the original United States Post Office stamp, a relic from when the post office ruled the underground. Mapping overlays show these lines snaking right beneath the busiest streets, invisible to millions of people walking above. In Paris, a few manhole covers stamped Pneumatic survive on quiet corners, and a stretch of tube under the 13th arrondissement lies empty but intact, a time capsule beneath the pavement. But the tubes aren't just relics. In places like Stanford Hospital, the same basic idea still moves blood samples, medications, and paperwork at nearly 18 miles per hour. Modern carriers are smaller and lighter, but the principle hasn't changed. Load it, launch it, and let air do the rest. Hospital logisticians trust these tubes to shave precious minutes off every delivery, beating elevators and foot traffic. The original cheat code for city speed didn't disappear. It just went undercover. Proof that some ideas are too good to die, even if most of us have forgotten they ever existed. Right now, cities choke on gridlock, while a forgotten hack sits buried beneath our feet. Paris fired instant messages underground before we texted. New York shot 95,000 letters per day past traffic. Hospitals still rely on these tubes, because speed matters when lives are at stake. Maybe the real question is not why we ditched this system. It is what else we are ignoring that could make our cities smarter. What would you revive?